Hello and welcome to the Virginia Solar Summit live stream. Welcome back. I'm your host, Dan French. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. The Virginia Solar Summit live stream is recorded before a live participatory audience. Thanks to everyone who's plugging in live today. We look forward to your questions. Plug into the Renaissance and participate in the next episode on our website, virginiasolarsummit.com. The Virginia Solar Summit is a diverse community of solar energy, real estate, environment, and economic development professionals, and we are produced in collaboration with a diversity of organizations united by a common goal: catalyzing a solar power renaissance in Greater Virginia to re-energize our economies, revitalize our communities, and restore our environment. The collaborative organizations behind the Virginia Solar Summit include Appalachian Voices, the Virginia Department of Energy, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and the Western Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center at West Virginia University. We are substantively focused on the development of solar energy, tactically focused on land use and redevelopment, geographically concerned with Virginia and West Virginia, and regionally oriented towards similar solar developments across all of Appalachia and America beyond. We organize a market-making, groundbreaking, news-making, and always entertaining event, the Virginia Solar Summit, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one in Richmond next spring. Our winter webinar series this off-season, we're focusing on two key themes: workforce development and West Virginia, which is why we are thrilled to feature a special guest on today's episode, the very first of the 2022 VSS Winter Webinar Series. She is appropriately Autumn Long from Appalachian Voices. You can see her there. That was the Virginia Solar Summit. We had a great time. Thanks again to all of our 2022 sponsors, especially AES, our Terawatt sponsor. And there's Autumn joining us today. Very busy. Thank you for your time. And thanks to everyone again who's plugging in. We'll all get to ask Autumn questions later. But first, a wheel around the Renaissance in the region. Let's take a look at some other events from a lot of our cousins in clean energy and elsewhere, hard at work on the clean energy transition, including, again, Miss Long next week. Our friends at the Appalachian Regional Commission, there's this event, One Appalachia. I encourage you all to attend. You can tune in live on Tuesday, October 18th, where Autumn's going to have to follow Cal Ripken Jr., whoever that guy is, and a couple of governors, and of course, Gail Manchin. And you know, ARC is doing a lot of things. This event goes on for actually 3 days next week in Flintstone, Maryland. So some folks may be plugging into that. There's still time to check that out, a broader look. And of course, relevant to our theme this winter, they're doing a lot, of course, with workforce. And ARC just got these Department of Labor grants, 13 projects in 8 Appalachian states, awarding $17.1 million. There's a lot of workforce grants out there. EPA has workforce grants. It's a key bottleneck issue, and I really look forward to rolling up the sleeves and digging into that with Autumn momentarily. But another important event next week, October 19th, is the Interstate Renewable Energy Council's Vision Summit, and they're focusing on workforce development this year as well. We're all kind of leaning into this. And big commercial, want to send a lot of beautiful love to our cousins at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit, which is also next week. And very important announcement, tomorrow is the last day to register, October 14th. So hit the website, vacleanenergysummit.org/register, and make sure you get your ticket because you won't be able to get one next week. Who's going to be there? Senator Tim Kaine is going to be there. I'm going to be there. There's going to be a lot of folks who attend the Virginia Solar Summit that will be there. Someone who did not attend the Virginia Solar Summit in favor of the head of a lot of his agencies, Governor Glenn Youngkin, will also be at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit next week. A lot of solar, a lot of policy, and more broadly oriented towards clean energy, but a lot of the same co-hosts and collaborators. A lot of the good folks in Virginia who are doing this work, and I encourage everyone to attend. I will see you there. They're focusing on workforce, the policy changes, including the IRA, decarbonization and electrification, even some land use issues. So I hope to see everyone at the Greater Richmond Convention Center, October 20 and 21. That's next week. And don't forget, if you haven't seen, there'll be some on the Friday, stay till Friday, October 21, because there'll be some EVs parked outside the convention center. Get your picture taken. Also, coming up, another workforce conference, Workforce Development Summit from the Center for Energy Workforce Development. A lot of collaborators here. You can see the link to register, cewd.org, workforce-development-summit. November 15 through 17 in Washington, D.C. Again, everyone, we're all kind of leaning into this people power problem. And I think it's going to take everyone to shoulder this cart collectively up the hill. So you can check out this event. And last, but certainly not least, from our friends at CHESA, the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association, which is a SEIA affiliate. Also that week, November 16 through 18, is their big annual conference, Solar Focus. I will be at this event in Baltimore at the Lord Baltimore Hotel. Another big one, another good one. CHESA is one of the oldest organizations in the region, and they put together an incredible event every year. I hope to see you there. Okay, without further ado, not your only opportunity to see Autumn Long on the speaking circuit, but she's very busy, as we're about to learn all the reasons why, and very glad she can be with us today in a slightly more casual environment, and look forward to talking to the folks who have plugged in live. But let me tell you about Miss Long. Autumn Long is a project manager with Appalachian Voices, where she oversees and directs the ARC Power supported Appalachian Solar Finance Fund Initiative, as well as the Southwest Virginia Energy Storage and Electrification Jobs Project. Autumn also teaches a course on solar PV policy and technology fundamentals at West Virginia University. Before taking on her current roles with Appalachian Voices, Autumn worked as a regional field director and West Virginia State Director for Solar United Neighbors, a national nonprofit dedicated to helping people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. So a good fit at Appalachian Voices as well. She has been an entrepreneur, a policy advocate for a long time, a community organizer, a writer, a researcher, whose work focuses on renewable energy access, education, and outreach in Central Appalachia. Autumn co-chairs the Central Appalachian Network's Clean Energy Working Group, serves on the West Virginia Advisory Committee for Partner Community Capital, and chairs the advisory board of New Roots Community Farm in Fayetteville, West Virginia. She holds an MA in geography from West Virginia University, a bachelor's of philosophy in anthropology from University of Pittsburgh, and a NABCEP PV associate credential as well. So with that big intro, I just want to first say, Autumn, thank you for your time and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for that kind introduction, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So first question to you, I want to ask, we heard your big bio, but tell us, career-wise, like, how did you end up where you are at Appalachian Voices, doing what you're doing, kind of the windy, Renaissance-like path that you took to get there?
Yeah, that was definitely the deep cut bio. So thanks for bearing with me through that, everyone. I came to renewable energy because I am a West Virginia native. I'm born and raised here in Appalachia, and this place is my home, and it means a lot to me. I've always been involved in environmental justice issues based on my personal life experiences and those around me in my local communities. And really, those of us who live here understand the toll that the fossil fuel extraction and the fossil fuel industry in our energy system has taken on this beautiful place in this region that I call home. And so for me, renewable energy is a really exciting opportunity to make a different energy system that is not only cleaner and more environmentally friendly and allows us to decarbonize our energy grid and, deal with some of the really short-term critical climate change issues that we're all dealing with and having to grapple with, but also it's a positive opportunity for really important economic development and diversification and job creation. And it presents a lot of opportunities for our communities in Central Appalachia to grow and become more prosperous and bring that prosperity back home. So that's a long-winded way to say that over the years of advocacy and activism in the environmental field, that can become very disheartening. And I found renewable energy to be really invigorating, and it's like a really positive, exciting, forward-looking industry to be involved in. So that's my personal story and connection to solar energy.
I share your deep affinity for the region. It's beautiful. I have deep roots there. My great grandpa's from Wayne, West Virginia, actually. Spent a lot of time stomping around. And what you said really rings true for me. Thinking back through the region's incredible history, powering the country, powering the world, paying the price, paying through the teeth. But now seeing kind of the end, literally the light at the end of the cold tunnel, new opportunity, and really to flip the lights back on again. And almost just like that, some of these, these big projects and storage, some of the microgrids, some of the stories I think we'll talk about later, but it's amazing to kind of see how quickly things have changed. And now our problem is getting capital into the right places. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, the people power problem, convincing folks that the future, there is light out there, there is a future, these jobs are real, and it's worth the time, training, and attention. With that, do you want to get right into some of the details? You want to dive in for folks? I know we've got a few slides in the set piece on the Solar Finance Fund. You want to get right into the details?
Sure. I think I can make that transition from here. Absolutely. And I think I'll just, bounce off what you said.
Please.
That we are sort of living through this incredible moment in history and in technological development in which our energy system is, fundamentally changing form. Our generation resources, but also the way that power gets distributed and consumed. And so this shift from a centralized fossil fuel-based large-scale utility grid to a more distributed renewable energy system, it creates opportunities for democratization of that system and a greater focus on environmental justice and a greater distribution of the benefits of that energy system for local people and communities. There have been historical winners in our existing energy system that are fighting tooth and nail to prolong that transition and to prevent it from happening in the most equitable and democratic way possible. So, for me, my work here that's based in Appalachia really centers on the hope and the need for this region to not be left behind in this energy transition, recognizing, as you said, the burden that we have historically borne and the essential role that we've played in building this nation and the globe through coal and also through oil and gas. And so, it's kind of my mission to ensure that Appalachia gets what's coming to it in terms of like recognition and benefits as we do shift into a renewable-based energy economy. And so my work now with the Appalachian Solar Finance Fund and Appalachian Voices is one sort of strategic on the ground program that we're implementing to try and make sure that that transition is taking place and that we're helping to catalyze that transition in Appalachian communities and that those benefits are generated and retained within our local communities here.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely the opportunity of the moment, and it's all about execution now. And I worry about, we're really going to boom on from here. There's a lot of capital in the space and a lot of foreign capital. People don't talk much about that, but Europeans, even the Chinese are investing. And if we go too fast, we've had many. It's a long history of land rushes in the United States. We've had one land boom after another going back centuries now, and it didn't always play out well for everybody. But I do think some of the mechanics of this one are different, and we are ready to just kind of slide over. And it's almost too good to be true. Like a lot of the old miners, we need every electrician we can find right now. But a lot of the skills translate, and this is maybe just my own personal belief. talking to folks and seeing this issue just get worse and worse for more than a decade, they just don't believe it. Like, it doesn't, maybe it's just still too far away. It's not tangible enough. Or maybe there's not enough projects. We haven't reached critical mass. But West Virginia still has the lowest labor force participation rate in the nation, and nothing yet has kind of been able to arrest that gap between this, what we're as professionals we're describing as a labor shortage, as a workforce crisis. And then on the other hand, we have a lot of folks who have really, for whatever reason, many different reasons, and not all just cerebral, not all related to mental health, legitimate, physical, all kinds of things under the sun, but reasons why people are not in the workforce. So I love talking to you, Autumn, getting big picture right away. You're a Renaissance person like me, and we need that kind of level of thinking, because what we've been doing is not working, and we definitely need a new playbook. Because we've really run out of, certainly with the Inflation Reduction Act, we've run out of time now. The boom is on, and we're going to choke on it.
Right.
So, but you're really in the trenches. Do you want to respond to that? What do you can go to Hearts and Minds if you want, or the Big Hope. Before we get to some of the details and the tactics of what y'all are doing, maybe get to the spirit of the issue for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're talking big picture here in terms of, how do we lift as many boats as we can with this rising tide of renewable energy. And I think there's, the devil is in the details with any sort of large scale economic development or change or revolution. There are better and worse ways to do any type of energy development. Any type of energy development has impacts and has costs, for the places and the people that are involved in that infrastructure development, and that manufacturing processes, and that transmission grid. And, there are impacts to any sort of energy production. So when we're scrambling as quickly as possible to, rise to meet this urgent need to address global climate change and to decarbonize our energy system, there is a real threat that may end up taking place in an exploitative manner, in a manner in which the benefits are centralized, and focused toward large private corporations, and not directed back into the communities where this development is taking place and where the impacts are being felt. And so, we have seen again and again through the history of energy development in Appalachia, this terrible story play out where our local communities and environment bear the burdens of an extractive system in which all of the benefits and profits of that system, are felt elsewhere and enjoyed elsewhere. And meanwhile, we're left holding the bag. And so we do, those of us working in this industry through a lens of environmental justice and through a community development lens, I think we're very well aware of that possibility, taking place again to some extent within solar or any other industry for that matter. And so advocating for fairness, equity, and justice is really a critical piece of this industry's development, that local communities, we need to let those voices come to the forefront, and people really be heard and take part in the decision-making processes that are going to be made so quickly in the coming years and over this next decade. I think we're going to see incredible changes happening in like the built infrastructure of our environment, in our transmission system. There's going to be huge impacts of this. And, I don't want to paint like this skeptical picture either. I think there's just an incredible range of real opportunities that this presents too. And it's up to us to ensure that those opportunities get realized and the benefits go where they're deserved. And, I know there's folks on this webinar who are probably, industry folks working in the private sector. I also don't want to set up a sort of oppositional, relationship or tone. I think there are overwhelmingly really good and sincere and thoughtful actors in the solar industry from top to bottom, and that we are seeing, real sincere and meaningful efforts take place from the private sector of this industry to build, an equitable, sustainable industry that does, offer living wages and good careers to employees, and build, an amazing whole new industry of job opportunities for people around the nation. So I think we can do this together. Um, and I think for the most part, we are sort of like on the same side. Although, we're coming at it with different, interests and focuses. So I'm always more hopeful, and I really believe in the power of collaboration and that people can find a way to work together and compromise. So I think we can do that in the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit community development sector. Like, I think we can come together and create a solar industry that distributes the greatest amount of benefit for the greatest possible good. So that's my Pollyanna hope for the future of solar.
No, I'm with you. And, that's kind of what we're all about here. Appalachian Voices, a co-host, original co-host of Virginia Solar Summit, along with Virginia Energy. Sometimes Appalachian Voices sues Virginia Energy, but here in this space, we can hold hands, we can be constructive, we can draw big circles around the areas of consensus. And I think that's been another very untold story over the last kind of 30, 40 plus ish years of the post EPA world, post Rachel Carlson and Silent Spring. Like, there's been bipartisan agreement, even in Washington. I think 4 or 5 of the last presidents in a row have reauthorized the Brownfield Act. I mean, there's been a lot of good things and constructive things that have happened. And it's kind of happening again in a different way now. Everybody wants to do all the energy, including nuclear. We're going to have some of these maybe virtuous races, but there's money and there's capital, there's programs and consensus kind of at all levels. And I agree with you. We can do it. We are. I mean, this was supposed, as a young energy attorney at BP, this was supposed to be the Mad Max decade. They promised me Mad Max. We're not fighting over gasoline, at least not everywhere. We do have a chance. Sometimes I like to say that the shot clock has reset. We still have all these challenges, but we have gotten this window. It did look, at the turn of the millennium, our energy picture in particular looked a lot worse than we are right now. And here we have the problem with over 10 million open jobs in the last JOLTS report from the Fed. So it's, as you also said, I mean, it's the time is now, the time is doing. And really glad.
In the time that I've been involved in this, industry, I've seen a real shift in the rhetoric and the narrative coming from, elected officials, policymakers, from the federal to the state to the local level, even in a state like West Virginia, which has for too long really dug in its heels and backed coal at the expense of any other type of energy development. That's changing, in our state and everywhere else. And so I hear it in the way these issues are being framed by our elected officials and policymakers. And that, gives me a lot of hope that it has been this inflection point within the past decade. And we've turned that corner, civically and culturally and politically speaking. And there's actually a lot of money getting put where that talk is now. And so we're seeing real investment from the government. I mean, the IRA's passage really cannot be overstated, in terms of its importance and how game changing I think it's going to be for renewable energy development on all scales. So it's exciting. It's a really exciting time. And I think now our challenge is going to be to, figure out how to meet those like opportunities and rise to capture them. And really like think big enough and strategically enough and long term enough to build the solutions we need now that we have these resources to draw upon.
Yeah, and consensus, from the investment side, ESG, since February 24th, now we have the geopolitical dimension. There's clean energy is just, I think, it's a fait accompli. Like this is the new thing. The biggest capital in the world is chasing clean energy projects across the board, from batteries to nuclear and everything in between. I saw Greta talking about nuclear. Nuclear is better than coal. That's a decent trade-off. This bridge to whatever the next long cycle is. I definitely think you're right about that. And industry has gotten the message. I'm a former BP alum, and now we've got BP Lightyear. And Shell has bought Silicon Ranch, and they're getting in on solar. I mean, the biggest companies, the biggest industries in the world are all kind of leaning into this wind, as they should be. The economics pencil. Aside from carbon, we don't even have mature carbon markets yet. So maybe those things will come.
Right.
But we don't have the people. This is the thing. It's been an amazing year, amazing summer. Everyone I know is busier than ever, including you, Autumn, doing this, doing that. Is it a good time now? Should we dive in maybe a little bit? I would love to learn more about, your tools in the trenches, what Appalachian Voices and y'all, how you're really squaring up this opportunity. Let me get back to my screen share somehow.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'd love to tell you all a little bit more about what we're doing here in Appalachia to, build the solar market in the region and to catalyze solar project development. And what we've found, there's just been this real chicken and egg question with the solar industry in Central Appalachia and many other places. Workforce is definitely always the elephant in the room, creating jobs, local jobs, good jobs for people in these regions where there is, as you mentioned, Dan, low workforce participation and lack of employment opportunities. So in order to do that, though, you have to have demand. You have to have a project pipeline that is, strong enough and sustainable enough to keep people employed. And so that's how we're approaching this pretty thorny issue of market development and employment development and workforce development. We're focusing on, how can we spur more solar projects to get constructed on the ground in rural communities in Central Appalachia. And so one way we're trying to solve for that is through this Appalachian Solar Finance Fund, which is a financial and technical assistance program, the goal of which is to catalyze these markets. And we are focusing specifically on communities that have been impacted by the decline of the coal industry. So there's 147 counties that we're serving throughout 6 Central Appalachian states. And you can go to solarfinancefund.org to see the full list of counties. And one of the really fun things that I get to do as the director of the Appalachian Solar Finance Fund is to award direct subgrants to nonprofit and public institutions to help them go solar. So we are able to. I just have to say, like, when I first started this this program and this role, someone referred to me as Solar Oprah because I get to like give away money for solar, and I love being Solar Oprah. And I don't have nearly as much money to give away as Oprah, for just to be clear, but it is just like kind of a dream job for me to just be able to directly help these really worthwhile projects get off the ground and to help them navigate the whole process from start to finish, to figure out how to fund and finance a project, to grapple with all the technical, pre-development issues that come up, and to sort of hold hands of these local community anchor organizations to help them realize, this dream of going solar that they have. So the types of organizations that we help are, as I mentioned, nonprofit and public entities. So that includes like K-12 schools, colleges and universities, local governments, municipal fire and rescue departments, water treatment plants, faith institutions. We've worked with several churches so far, and churches are one of these great examples of really impactful community anchors in these local rural communities that provide so many public services and civic support services for the most the people in their community that need it most. So we're able to provide that direct subgrant assistance to those entities. And we're also able to work with local commercial businesses to help them with technical assistance support. So any type of local small commercial scale distributed solar project, that's really the scale we're working at, trying to build out and to increase interest in that small scale level of project development. So yeah, go ahead and pop that slide forward. Thank you, Dan. I want to shine a light on some of the cool work and projects that we've already been able to do. We got this program launched about a year ago with really important funding from the Appalachian Regional Commission's Power Initiative, as well as many other wonderful funders. And so within the past year, we've already received several dozen eligible applications, and we have pledged over $350,000 toward a dozen projects throughout Central Appalachia. So we've been able to support solar projects on nonprofit youth education and leadership institutions, on public county school systems, community event facilities, community farms, as I mentioned, several faith institutions, local nonprofits supporting low income and unhoused people, even an animal shelter. So we're really trying to, support a wide range of these important, small, but really impactful institutions and anchors in their communities. Already there's been over $8 million of public and private investment that'll go into these projects, 4 megawatts of new solar development in the region, over $13 million in energy cost savings for these institutions, and some really cool workforce development programming as well. So one of our goals with this program is not just to benefit the project owner or the property owner that's going to be able to capture energy cost savings from the lifetime of their solar array, but we're also, investing in the local solar developers and installers and companies that are working in this region to build out these distributed solar projects. And that's one of the key goals and outcomes that we want to see with this program, is growth within that solar development sector, within those local businesses that are employing local people to actually perform these installations. And so I'll give you an example of a pretty cool model that we've helped to develop in Southwest Virginia, called the Solar Workforce Accelerator. And that is a partnership between Appalachian Voices and 2 community colleges in Southwest Virginia. It's funded by the Virginia Coalfield Economic Development Authority. And we're able to provide paid on-the-job apprenticeships for apprentices working on solar installations in this region. And then the community colleges provide coursework and training and help create that apprenticeship pipeline from their students and local workers. So it's already been a really successful model. There is a whole slew of solar projects that have been under construction this summer and into this fall on county school systems in Southwest Virginia. And they were able to employ, their own high school students and community college students as paid summer apprentices working at a really competitive wage. I'll also add that we want to make sure we're offering paid work that is not just, lip service to on the job experience, but that actually gives people a living wage and that gives young people an opportunity to get a foothold in this industry and to think about it as a longer term career. A couple of the apprentices who had these summer employment opportunities with this program have gone on to full-time employment with the contractor that's working in this area to actually install solar in the region. So I'm proud of this program. I think it's a really successful model of local workforce development programming that is replicable and scalable for other Appalachian communities. And I think what it's really taken is that creative partnership between the community colleges and the schools and the developers working in this area that are willing to take a chance and try some of this innovative workforce programming. And it's also, they recognize that they need this because they need to hire more people. And of course, finding workers is a real challenge right now. So thinking about the whole stack of like what it takes in terms of financing solar, our little Appalachian Solar Finance Fund plays a pretty small role, but I think it's a significant role. It can help sort of nudge projects forward that otherwise get stuck in this pre-development stage where, somebody's just kind of spinning their wheels and it looks overwhelming and it's a lot of money up front and they don't really know how to navigate the financial ecosystem to like find capital and understand how solar financing works for them. So we're trying to work with solar investors, with financiers, and lenders, and connect them with folks who want to go solar but need help to navigate that whole system. So thinking about what this looks like, we've got these small grants that we're able to offer and technical assistance support, and then on top of that, like again, I come back to how I can't overstate how excited I am about the IRA's passage. Incentives have historically driven the growth of this industry, and that slice of the pie just got a whole lot bigger thanks to the IRA. For those of us working in the nonprofit and public solar space in that small commercial scale, the direct pay option for the solar investment tax credit is an absolute game changer. It allows this entire sector to access, a really critical tax credit that they were just not able to access in a lot of cases before the IRA. So I think we're going to see huge growth and development in that sector of distributed solar. We're going to see a lot more schools and governments and public institutions taking advantage of that incentive. There's also some really important adders that I think are going to be very impactful in Central Appalachia. The Energy Communities Adder, which is not which has not been, finalized in terms of its definition or eligibility guidelines, and we're all sort of waiting and hoping to weigh in with Treasury and the IRS and the various agencies that are developing these final rules to ensure that these adders are accessible to those communities that need them. But the Energy Communities Adder could be an important additional incentive for a lot of places in Central Appalachia. There are also low income adders and domestic manufacturing adders that latter might be challenging at first because of supply pipelines, but I think it's going to be very significantly impactful in developing our domestic solar manufacturing supply chains, which over the medium to longer term is going to be absolutely critical in building a sustainable domestic solar industry from top to bottom. As we work up this pyramid, there's also an important role for credit enhancements to play in penciling out these projects. And we work with a partner called Invest Appalachia. They're a regional fund that provides a really flexible array of credit enhancement and financing for these projects to help absorb risk and get projects going. One thing I think we're going to see more of, thanks to the direct pay ITC option, is the need for bridge loan financing for institutions and entities that know they're able to access that ITC remittance, but that need a bridge loan to cover that capital gap until that government payment comes back to them. And the timeline, is anybody's guess. Hopefully it won't be too long a timeline. But I think we're going to see, an increased need for bridge loans. And one thing that we're talking through and developing at the Appalachian Solar Finance Fund is ways that we might be able to offset the interest and fees associated with those bridge loans for, small nonprofit and public projects. So unsecured bridge loans, interest rate buy downs, and loan guarantees are the types of credit enhancements, that can really help absorb risk for projects that are, otherwise viable and impactful. And then, of course, we're working to connect these projects with investors, third-party owners, PPA and lease operators, and develop, ownership structures that will allow folks to benefit from this development in this financial field. And then finally, at the top of the stack remains really important, just like traditional financing and lending from banks and financial institutions. We work a lot with CDFIs in the region and non-conventional lenders like the Invest Appalachia Fund to provide financing for impactful projects. So, we who work in the industry get really used to navigating the complexity of solar finance and solar technology. But for, the superintendent of a public school system or the executive director of a local nonprofit organization, a lot of this is very alien. And so one of the roles we play at the Solar Finance Fund is to really help navigate this world and these options for people and help connect them to financing that's going to work for them. And in many cases, it's out there. It's just a matter of, knowing where to look for it and how to ask for it. So I think that gives you, a pretty comprehensive overview of what we're doing with the program, what our goals are, and the role we see ourselves playing within that bigger solar finance and project development ecosystem. Um, so yeah, Dan, I guess maybe I'll turn it back over to you to see if you have any follow-up questions on any of those topics, or if folks from the audience, I don't know if we're taking questions from the audience. Maybe I should have clarified that before saying it.
Yeah, let's take your questions. Yeah, if you have a question, you can drop in the chat. I have some questions. I'll let them stack up for a while because I certainly have a lot of questions. I'll read your some of your information on your last slide here. And I apologize, we left out a slide. I didn't realize there was animation in that one picture on that slide, so I apologize. But for the listeners, so you can learn more about the Solar Finance Fund at solarfinancefund.org. Autumn's email, can I read your email aloud, Autumn? Yeah, autumn.long@appvoices.org. That's APPVOICES.org. Again, solarfinancefund.org. Really terrific stuff, Autumn, all around. I love the apprenticeship model, the program. I think it's amazing. I was just reading this month, the solar work group of Southwest Virginia had a ribbon cutting over at Wise Primary School installation. I know some of your colleagues at Voices are involved in that project, and they're talking about not only is it an amazing Solar on Schools project, which as you were kind of describing before, is a great Solar on Schools is right there. It's a great way to kind of involve the entire community all at once. It's visible. We're putting solar in front of the young eyeballs, and training up kind of maybe that next generation of workforce. And it's an area where there's been a lot of success. I read recently, I think it made headline news about how many schools have put some kind of solar on their rooftop or elsewhere. Over 10%, I think, like closing on 15%. Don't quote me on that. But I love how you are really stepping into the gaps. That's my favorite thing as an old transaction attorney, retired transaction attorney. The private market can't solve all these things. When the private market stacked with a government program can't really fill the capital stack sometimes. And here you all are filling the capital stack and finding the actual laborers to fill the gaps. And that's exactly what we need to make it all work. So bravo. How's it going? Like, are you engaging some of the young people? Can you dive in a little bit more and just give us some of your first person perspective on how you're kind of stacking it all up there?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Dan. I have a habit of muting myself when I'm not speaking on Zoom, and then I can't unmute myself. So thank you for being my unmuter. Yeah, I teach a course on solar PV policy and technology fundamentals at West Virginia University. And I'm teaching it now. This is the third year that we've offered it for students in energy management. And that department, the head of that department approached me about developing this course 3 years ago now. Because he just kept hearing from students that they really wanted solar-based course curriculum, and they wanted to learn about the solar industry and get involved in solar careers. West Virginia University, has a very robust mining school, and they work a lot in oil and gas development, and there is a really developed energy focused, department there, a series of departments and schools. But renewables, historically has not been part of their offering. And so I was really happy to be given that opportunity to develop, what was like the first solar PV focused course that is offered at WVU now. And every time it's, completely filled up, the student demand is consistent and high. And it's interesting, when I first, meet the students and want to learn from them about why they're taking the course, a lot of them mention, their interest in the environment, their love for the outdoors, and their care for sustainability and renewable energies role within that. But even more of them mention wanting to go into solar as a career, or at least wanting to explore the solar industry as a career opportunity. So I think, hopefully the word is getting out there that this is like a massive growth industry, that it does present really good long-term sustainable local career opportunities for folks in a wide range of roles. I mean, we, as you mentioned, like we are going to have to train and deploy an extraordinarily large number of electricians over the course of the coming years and decades. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of thousands, which is a big order. And this is a really like lucrative, skilled trade to be involved in. So if you go down that path of like skilled construction trades from an apprentice to a journeyman to a master electrician, you have a really good, stable, lucrative career. A lot of this is, also affiliated with unions through the IBEW or other construction trades. I think we're going to see more and more unionization in the solar industry, which I think is going to be really important to ensure that, workers have good, safe workplaces and livable wages and conditions. So there's a lot of like skilled construction trade roles that are already in huge demand and are going to grow and grow. But there's also sales and design and engineering and site development and community liaising and everything that it takes to run a complex business and industry. So I really encourage every student to be serious about looking into the opportunities in the solar industry, to pursue basic entry-level NABCEP certification if they're able to do that, and to see about getting their foot in the door, because I think once you do, you can continue down that path as long as you want. And it's distributed solar that provides the lion's share of jobs in the solar industry. Utility scale solar represents the largest capacity and growth in terms of solar generation, but it takes a lot more jobs and people on the ground to develop rooftop solar in our communities. So there are really important opportunities for those local communities to like retain young people. In Central Appalachia, we've been losing populations since 1950. And people, have been streaming out of Central Appalachia to go to cities, to go to other areas where there are more economic opportunities, more jobs. And so, when we're talking about solar being deployed on our homes, on our businesses, in our local communities, those jobs are existentially local. They can't be outsourced, and they give, you an opportunity to stay and be a part of your home place, your home community, if that's what you want to do. So I hope that, and I think that young people see that and are excited about it. And I think that, anecdotally, it seems like the enthusiasm is there and the thought leadership is there to really see like this is the future, and I should hop on board that train.
Thanks. Yeah, it's very hopeful vision. It's it's increasingly tangible. I think we've reached critical mass, and I think it's still underestimated what lays before us. It's not Mad Max, but I do worry about the 2020s a little bit. The world kind of is teetering on the edge. I'm still very constructive on North America. But beyond the jobs you mentioned, I'm very excited about agrivoltaics, taking some of these ground mounted projects to scale. Solar grazing is already a big thing, depending on what state you're in. Sheep prices have already moved. I've been telling all my folks down home, forget about the puppies and the ponies, get into sheep. But that means a lot more veterinarians. And actually, it will mean more dogs, just not maybe some of the show dogs, real sheep dogs. We may become not just me talking crazy, folks talking about us getting up to New Zealand type numbers with our sheep, just because it saves on operation and maintenance. Forget about the actual agriculture itself, but it's just more sustainable, cheaper. greener, cleaner, and much more acceptable to the communities.
Yeah.
If you're bringing in flocks of sheep several times a year instead of mowing it. And in fact, there was a project out in Colorado that almost died until they decided that, okay, that will be our long-term O&M plan. We'll bring a sheep grazer on site, and then the community changed its mind. I wish I had that in front of me and I referenced that, but folks can Google for that. So again, I think it really, I know a lot of Americans that poll were on the wrong track, and there's certainly a lot of issues. But in terms of the real machinery, I think we have made the turn. We've been talking a lot about the IRA and all this capital, but each of these columns, I think, maybe we've hit a bottom, and we're going to start to walk up this virtuous cycle or circle, whichever you want to say. And maybe I'm a little too hopeful, but I'm starting to see it. What about some of the big news? Well, let me get to a question actually before some of the big news. I know there's been some, we talked in our pre-call about some of the big announcements, particularly in West Virginia. But someone's asking about, manufacturing, and you mentioned that. There's a part in the IRA specifically for, American-made domestic manufacturing. So Eileen's question from Sierra Club, thank you, Eileen, is, are you working specifically on solar manufacturing in Appalachia?
Yeah, I think the IRA definitely, recognizes and creates some very real avenues to incentivize domestic manufacturing throughout the electrification supply chains, throughout the solar and renewable supply chains. And so there are so many pieces of that supply chain. You think about a solar module, but like there are many, many elements that make up a solar module, and every one of those elements represents an opportunity for a specific niche, manufacturing market to develop. The other project I manage for Appalachian Voices is based in Southwest Virginia. It's called the Energy Storage and Electrification Manufacturing Jobs Project. Lovely title, just rolls off your tongue. And in that program, we're working with a group of local manufacturers in Southwest Virginia who have historically been very closely tied to the coal industry, and they build different pieces of products to support the coal industry. But it turns out that these manufacturers, the products they're producing and the skill sets that they've developed and the technology they use are very applicable to electric vehicle charging station infrastructure, our battery storage boxes and infrastructure. And so, the storage industry is blowing up, and that's going to be like the new horizon for renewable energy. Is it going to be in storage? And I think we're going to see massive growth in that market in the next few years. And so positioning local manufacturers to be able to pivot into these new markets and diversify and produce products that are needed for these, new EV and battery focused sectors is what we're really focusing on in Southwest Virginia. And so the legacy of the region's manufacturing is another, opportunity and strength that we bring to this new world that we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned transferability early, but a lot of folks, maybe non-professionals, but even some professionals, again, we might be underestimating how much steel we're going to need, how much aluminum, how much infrastructure work and site grading and all the things that go in, particularly to these ground mounted projects, but everything, even residential infrastructure, microgrids, all these things are coming. And I think that's part of the reason we're seeing, kind of wider community adoption and bipartisan acceptance, and kind of state to state, some of these clean energy policies are sticky, because the reality is these things pencil. And we've been doing these things for a long time. And it's really just another phase of this kind of, at least going back 10 years or so, since the fracking revolution, Industrial has been coming back since Amazon Prime in 2013. There's been a huge run in the warehouse space. We've had a big warehouse rebuild everywhere from New Jersey to Los Angeles and everywhere in between. So we've kind of built the pieces of this. There's a lot of things in place, and I think that's why we're seeing. I went around the horn to a lot of the other groups and organizations focusing on workforce. And next couple weeks are big week, but we're all kind of here now at this moment because it's kind of been building up like a tea kettle starting to whistle. Do you want to? I don't know if you're fighting to jump in there, Autumn, or
No,
I have a couple more questions.
I'm in agreement. I think we have like a really special like generational opportunity and moment right now to reinvigorate our domestic manufacturing sector and really bring a lot home and do a lot more domestic manufacturing in this industry. The IRA sets us up to do that in ways that I think are probably going to work pretty well. So it'll be cool to see that, and I think it's going to be necessary, you know, to deploy what we need to deploy at the scale and the pace that we do. Like we need to be able to produce that here in the United States and focus, you know, on building out that entire product chain and supply chain. It's already, you know, proven the you know, COVID has really brought home how fragile our global supply chains are. And so I think that's probably also played a role in our policymakers' focus on this. And, you know, Senator Manchin's key role in the passage of the IRA definitely ensured that a lot of that domestic manufacturing was really emphasized in that legislation.
Yeah, and chips is another important piece, part of the ongoing trade war with China. So again, in another big piece of this in 2022 has been the geopolitics,
Right.
and that I don't think is going away anytime soon. Thanks to our live audience still sticking around. Bonus time with Autumn Long from Appalachian Voices. Drop your question in the chat if you have them. I have a couple more questions before we go. We haven't even really talked about a lot of the big news in West Virginia. I think we could talk for 2 hours, Autumn, but I definitely wanted to square you up and give you the opportunity to come back to, because you're doing so many things. And we don't know who's watching this now or later. Can I square you up on who are the eligible entities? Why should they be working with you? Can you go through just the elevator pitch, the ABCs of who you're looking to work with, and how you can help them?
Yeah. So entities that are eligible for solar finance fund support include nonprofits and public institutions. So that is everything from local governments and schools to faith institutions to civic organizations working in their local communities. If you are not a for-profit business, then we can help you with direct sub-grant award support. And if you are a for-profit business, we can also help you with technical assistance support. And so that can look like assistance with grant writing to access USDA Rural Energy for America program grants and loan guarantees. That's a really important program for our rural communities. We can help you with engineering and design, technical assistance, or any sort of interconnection and inspection pieces that you might need some support with throughout the entire development process. So I'm really here to serve as like a conduit and a resource to connect solar projects directly with the funding they need, and also to connect you with financial institutions and lenders and investors that can help finance your project with repayable investment. And solarfinancefund.org is the website to go to if you want to learn more about our program. And it does include a full list of the counties that are eligible for the program. And those are coal impacted counties in Central Appalachia.
Awesome. Yeah, solarfinancefund.org. Beautifully stated. And tell a friend. You know, we've all got to be champions now. We make funny T-shirts and have cool slogans because that's where we are. And I if you look at the data, that JOLTS report, which I watch every month, the jobs opening and labor turnover survey that the Fed puts out, 10 million open jobs. I remember complaining about it when it was 5 million open jobs. And we're just not doing a good enough job, I think, communicating despite all the effort. So it's really got to be neighbor to neighbor at this point. Hey, have you heard?
Yep.
So also, Autumn, if you have time, we haven't talked about some of the really big grants that have come down that you guys are working on. That's the big SB 4001 and the $500 million aviation hub in West Virginia that Governor Justice announced. A lot of big things in West Virginia. Before we go, is there anything that you want to mention specific to West Virginia? Because I've had so many conversations this summer about redevelopment, the mine lands, the old ERP portfolio of sites. There's a lot of stranded orphan properties in West Virginia. And we messed up just right in some of them. We terraced, just stripped the mountains bare and terraced them. And they're kind of not, it's a good place to start. Some of these flat terraces, slap some solar panels on.
It could be a pretty good place for solar panels, couldn't it? Right? Maybe not much else, but yeah. I think, solar on former mine lands there's a huge amount of interest in that. It presents both challenges and, really nice strategic alignment sometimes. There is a lot going on in West Virginia right now on all scales within renewable energy, from large utility scale solar siting progress to, manufacturers citing their operations in the state, to the development of our distributed solar marketplace, with rooftop residential and commercial solar. And one really exciting coalition that we're involved in that bears discussion is called Act Now. And that's the Appalachian Climate Technologies Coalition. This is a really broad, sweeping initiative led by the Coalfield Development Corporation. And, they have really established themselves as a very visionary and innovative leader in community and economic development and workforce development in West Virginia. The Act Now Coalition received a $62.8 million award from the EDA Build Back Better program. That announcement was made last month, and it's involving everything from our cities of Charleston and Morgantown and Huntington and WVU and Marshall to develop new technology education. There's going to be major investment in renewable energy manufacturing and distribution and development hub, battery storage development and R&D, and then our program also is going to benefit from that. And we're going to have more funds to deploy to assist more solar project development in the coal fields, especially Southern West Virginia, and to develop out some of those innovative financial tools that we're trying to really hone to help, put money where it's really needed, like those credit enhancements I mentioned earlier. So I'm super excited to help, our piece of this coalition is called Repower Appalachia, and I'm excited to help repower Appalachia for sure, and to be a part of like a very collaborative, broad coalition. When you see Charleston and Huntington and WVU and Marshall working together, that, something is going really well, and that's like, it's different and important. So yeah, I'm excited for that.
Thanks. Yeah, that goes right back to what we talked about at the beginning of the call about the collaborative spirit that's starting to take over in spite of the noise and the news and the setbacks and the lost opportunities. We still squander so much of our potential. It is happening. And more. Yeah, you mentioned the Act Now Coalition, huge grant, $63 million grant, a competitive grant, a grant recipient of the National Build Back Better Regional Challenge, organized by President Biden and the U.S. Economic Development Administration. A lot of Brightfield heroes, a lot of Appalachian West Virginia heroes, part of that project. Great to see. And the $500 million project that I mentioned that Governor Justice announced is the BHE Renewables project, and a big aviation hub that will be powered by a renewable microgrid there. The bill was SB 4001, which allows for the creation of a new state program, and I think two of these regions in the state. So, and we've also mentioned institutional money, and the big money, and of course, BHE Renewables is Berkshire Hathaway. So
Yep.
everybody's in on this game.
Yeah, and they're going to be developing a large industrial site along the Ohio River that will include a microgrid. And this bill essentially like bypasses some of the state's, increasingly outdated utility regulatory regulations to allow this type of power generation to take place within this industrial application. So yeah, the state government is definitely hearing the demands of corporate, investors and trying to meet them in order to get those folks to come to West Virginia. So that's going to be what it takes. I think, as I mentioned, our elected officials are starting to realize that like they need to be flexible and think forward thinking and more innovative about the opportunities that they're giving to new investors and employers to come into a region or an area. And access to renewables is absolutely like across the board #1 demand.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to give a shout out across the border, Virginia. Not to be left behind. Governor Glenn Youngkin announced the Energy Delta Lab, which will be located way Western Virginia, Wise County, near the town of Pound. Another multi-million-dollar innovation lab. Dominion's involved with that project. More grants. And our shout out our friend Will Payne, Fullfield Development. A lot of folks making things happen everywhere, and it's great to see kind of the momentum taking over. So, Autumn, I'll close. Last thought from you before we wrap up.
Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate this, and it was a really fun conversation. I'm glad, I feel like very optimistic and hopeful as I'm hearing myself say all these things. I'm like, yeah, we can do this. Like, this is really cool and fun and like a really exciting moment to be involved in. So I'm just happy to be here. And thanks everyone for, for spending time with us today. And so I hope, this is sort of like energizing to each of you as well. And please, follow up and reach out if you're interested in pursuing solar finance fund support, or if you just want to learn more about what we do. And networking is invaluable. So thanks for the opportunity, Dan. It's been fun.
Thank you, Autumn. Thanks for the work you're doing. It's so important and so timely. And yeah, you already got to my last question. It was like, are we going to make it? So I usually ask our guests, and I think you believe we are. The Mad Max is maybe not permanently off the table, but if we lean in, if we do the work, I think we can get through this push to 9 billion and 10 billion sustainable mouths to feed on the planet.
Yeah. When I think too large scale or long term, my brain starts to sort of short circuit and I might get a little overwhelmed with existential dread. But I have found that the key for me is to really focus in the local scale and to think about like, what can I do, and put one foot in front of the other. I think I'm a more tactical thinker than a strategic thinker, so maybe that works for me because it helps me keep focused. But I think like there are really tangible examples of progress being made, and so I think I am hopeful that we can figure this out.
I agree 100%. I'm a strategic thinker. I do a lot of global macro work. So you can just take it from me. We're going to make it. You can put your head down and be tactical. In fact, I recommend that when you're not telling your neighbors how great things are going to be, put your head down, get to work. And if I'm wrong and the world blows up, you can hate me later.
Okay, I know who to blame.
Yeah. If doomsday comes, blame me. But I've heard this talk. And I'll try to end with this. My whole life, my dad was waiting. And folks who have been to our events, I've told this story many times. My dad was waiting in line for gas in the 1970s. We've been here before, and what's happening now is structural. It's not going to change suddenly, and it's really up to us to kind of make this the new normal and just kind of upgrade civilization. I see it happening. Thanks to a lot of the hard work, though, like folks. Autumn Long and the whole squad at Appalachian Voices and everybody else. So Autumn, last thing, I'm going to be at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit in Richmond next week, but tell the folks where you are going to be. I did a tease. Where can they find you next?
I'll be at the Appalachian Regional Commission's annual conference in Maryland next week. So I will wave at you across the border from there. We'll be presenting a keynote from the Central Appalachian Network on the importance of multi-state network building and solving some of these complex structural issues that we're grappling with and facing today. So I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully a lot of folks in Maryland next week.
Awesome. Well, safe travels. Keep up the good work. Thanks again to our live audience still sticking around with us here at the end. This will be live. We're live streaming on YouTube. It'll be archived forever. You'll be able to find it. Links on our blog and via email. We'll send that out. I hope everybody keeps up the good work. Now is the time. I've never seen an October like this. This fourth quarter rush is going to be insane. So I wish everyone strong coffee and the occasional cat nap and grind on it. There's a lot of renaissance left to go. So with that, I'll let everyone go. Thanks again. Autumn Long from Appalachian Voices, and keep up the good work, everyone. The future is bright.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.